Good afternoon, Amy.
Good afternoon, Alexis.
Good. So today we are recording on August 18th, and there's a lot happening. We're leading up to a big full moon this weekend, and Venus has just entered Libra yesterday. So that feels yummy and supportive, and we're going to need it. We're going to need it because there's a big few weeks coming, the end of August into the beginning of September. There's a lot of things happening, a lot of like pieces finally dropping, a lot of Uranus, our buddy Uranus, who's just the disruptor and likes to shake things up. So yeah, that's where we are. We're kind of heading into this full moon, this second full moon in Aquarius, and we'll get into all of it. We'll get into all the details of it, but I think overall what I'm feeling this week and as we're leading into the second full moon is just really this, and we were talking about it too, how we're seeing like it happen in our neighborhood of like deep excavating and like construction, and they put in temporary pipes down my street so they can clean the pipes, and there's all this like deep cleaning, detox, like all of this yeah, just like those last pieces that we couldn't even clean before or clear before because we didn't even know were there are there now. So yeah, that's what I'm feeling. How about you?
I love that. And yes, I've got construction going on all the way around my house here. And they've got their big machines and they're digging stuff up and they're installing new pipes. And it really feels like Venus has spent this time in Virgo prepping for the action. And now Mars is coming through the rest of Virgo, taking the actions, doing the cleaning. Like he's got the honey-do list, right? Venus left him the honey-do list. And she's now moved into Libra, which yes, feels like, oh, okay, good. We've got some spaciousness. We're going to find some balance between the two sides, whatever the two sides are. There's some balance to be found here in these relationships. And Mars is now finishing his time in Virgo. He's got his honey-do list. He's going to clean out the pipes. He's going to dig some big holes. Hopefully he's going to fill them in and put asphalt over the top of them before the snow flies here in Minnesota. That's just my personal preference, universe. Just please. And Mercury's there to play. And there is this big electrifying Uranus energy, and Saturn hasn't gone away. Like Saturn's he's one of my main men, and he is still there, still making sure that we're actually taking the steps to work with even the information we have right now as the information continues to come in. So yeah, definitely feeling it. Super excited about this full moon this weekend. Feels really juicy. Feels like an upgrade. Like the energy of everything right now feels like an upgrade to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. And with Uranus, that's the energy that he brings. It's radical change, and there's been a lot of Uranus. We've had a lot of Uranus this year, really, and especially this week as we go through the astrology, you'll see there's a lot of Uranus, and that he is that upgrading, that bringing change, so that we can kind of jump to the next level. Yeah, and Venus in Libra, we'll have Venus in Libra through September 10th. So for the rest of August and a little bit of September, and she's home in Libra. So she has two home signs, Taurus and Libra. And when she's home, it's like this breath of fresh air. And of course, there also will be a lot of relationship stuff coming up because Venus in Libra is very much about balance and harmony, and also how we are in relationship to others and things in our lives. We feel into Venus and Taurus because that's another one of her home signs. Venus and Taurus is very much about, and this can be Venus anywhere, right? But it's highlighted when she's in these signs. When Venus is in Taurus, it's the sensuality. It's like feet on the grass, the taste of food. It's those senses that are highlighted when she's in Taurus. When she's in Libra, that's all still there, but it's a lot more about relationship and kind of that mirror that gets held up by Venus when she's in Libra. So that is definitely a theme that we'll be working with for the rest of August into September. And with all the other stuff that's happening, also Juno is on the South Node. So Juno on the South Node is clearing out anything in relationship that doesn't work anymore. Juno is the goddess of sacred marriage, of contracts, of union, which can be both union within, but also our relationship with others. And so if there are any contracts in our life, and it doesn't have to be with just personal partners, but any contracts in our lives with, be it business partners, friends, any contracts that are no longer serving, it's coming up to the surface now. And Venus on the South Node, it's like that deep clearing of what needs to go. And it could also be relationships that have been gone for many years of your life. And now it's like that final, like that deepest core excavating, like this is the piece we weren't ready to see or let go of until now. And we can only move forward from that clear space. So just, I love Venus in Libra, but also just prepare for all of these things to come up. And the more open we are and curious, like the more we want to see, because it's really just seeing things about ourselves where we hold on to old beliefs, where we are still holding on. The more open we can be, the more we can shift and move towards what we really want. So Venus in Libra is lovely and yummy. And also, can bring up a lot of pieces around relationship. So, yeah.
I love that. She also, for me, Venus in Libra really feels about in peace, like what is our ability to be in conflict? Because of course, conflict is one of the things that help us move towards balance without being defensive. To not come at it from a defended place, but a really open-hearted, receptive place. And her sitting in Libra feels like a really big ability to show up and meet our relationships, ourself, our friends, our colleagues, our lovers, whomever, from an open-hearted place rather than that armored place of defense. Because we are shedding, most often when we're in defense, we're dealing with something from the past. Because defense is a type of almost hysteria. We can get a little hysterical. And if it's hysterical, it's historical, which is like one of my new little favorite things. If it's hysterical, it's historical. To really be paying attention of, am I present with me and who I want to be in this world? And am I being present with the person in front of me, or am I like overlaying them with other people, with old situations? Am I pulling things from my past, that South Node piece, into my present day contracts?
Yes. Yeah, I love that. And that you're bringing this piece in because when we are defensive or in resistance, it doesn't leave space for us to actually explore what's coming up, because I promise you it will just keep coming back around. And like there's something in when we're in conversation or communication with somebody else, like what they speak, if it brings something up in you, if it triggers you, it's often, and what they are saying, there may be truth in what they're saying, right? So this is all pieces we have to explore. Like, is there truth in what they're saying? There may not be truth in what they're saying, but it may be just that piece they're bringing up, what it brings up in you. And so all of these pieces you're not going to be able to explore, or just being in that mindset, like, are they right or wrong? Like, that doesn't even matter, right? It's just the curiosity to explore it for yourself, come to that place, and then come back and have that conversation. And if you have people in your life where you can do that with, that's beautiful, because you are able to work through and see all the pieces. Because yes, it'll just keep coming back up in different ways. If you choose to move to a different relationship, it'll just come back up in that relationship. So yeah, that's a big part of the like defensiveness. And there is a support in Venus being there because she's, you know, she's supporting and holding. There's a little bit of more of an open-heartedness with Venus in Libra because she's home and she's relaxed, right? Like she can be in that place, but we have to first have the curiosity and be willing to go there. But I love that you bring that in. And then bringing in Mars also. So Mercury is conjunct Mars today, which is August 18th. So right after Venus moves into Libra, Mercury conjunct Mars in Virgo, aspecting Uranus, who's about to go retrograde. So there's a lot happening. So let's break that down.
Love it.
We have Mercury, who's about communication, also our thoughts. And Mercury is home in Virgo. So he is very, like, I have noticed things have been very loud and very clear.
Oh yeah.
Like to the point where it's been symbols or license plates or something, but I know exactly what that means. I was like, let it be loud, which is one of our favorite, you know, sayings. But Mercury and Virgo, like things are clear if we're open to it, right? If we're open, the messages are clear right now. Especially then we have Mercury conjunct Mars today, who brings in the action. It brings in the, like, I'm willing to go there. I'm willing to look at this thing. I'm willing to take action. Like it's been too long that it's been like kind of, you know, hanging out in my backpack. Like I'm ready to move forward, to take action, to listen to the messages that are coming. All making an aspect trine to Uranus, who is about the radical change, who is about the up leveling, the upgrading, right? So it's perfect. It's perfect if you're in that open place to be able to see and then to shift into the, the up leveling that Uranus brings.
Yeah, because and Uranus is in the process of stationing with this aspect. And as he stations and turns retrograde, like we're really looking at how do we release the old pieces? How do we welcome change? Because Uranus is change. He's that like lightning, like, and now there's change. And granted, he's in Taurus. So, you know, bulls they're one step at a time. And just even taking one step at a time is at least steps forward. This is a time to be thinking differently, and that different thinking and communicating differently. Like here's that Mercury piece. How do we communicate differently than we have before? How do we take action differently? What are the actions we would normally have historically taken in our hysteria in this situation? And can we take different action? Can we meet ourselves and those that we're in relationship with in a different way? Can we meet our lives in a different way? How can we communicate from a deeper place that is maybe some place we haven't gone before, because we're thinking differently and we're seeing things differently and we're upgrading. It's time to change.
Yeah, and I love that you're bringing in the Uranus and Taurus piece, because it's most likely things that we've been working towards all year and probably years. Like also thinking back to Uranus moved into Taurus, I believe in 2018. I think he might have dipped in around that time and, you know, he retrograded out, but around that time he moved into Taurus. So these are things also that we've been working on for years, right? There's that piece of it that like he's a big theme for this year, which we've spoken about before. But that kind of like slow and steady part of Taurus, like we've been working on these things for a long time. And now he's going to go retrograde in a year where this is like the Uranus year, really.
Yeah.
And he's about to go retrograde. So the next day, that was August 18th. August 19th, Uranus goes retrograde in Taurus, 14 degrees of Taurus. So you can also look at, if you have anything around 14 degrees of Taurus or the fixed signs, the same day the sun opposes Jupiter. who brings illumination and expansion as we go within with with Uranus and Taurus. So that idea that it's been themes that we've been working with all year, probably things that have gotten clearer, we've been able to see this year, but that have been, going on for years. And then there's this illumination that comes on this day as well, that we get to go within and do that looking within of our old beliefs, of those things that we've probably sensed and had, awareness of this year. But also that idea of like, we can only do what we do when it's ready and when it's time and when we have the awareness. So being open to the new things that are coming, even just this week with this full moon, there's so much energy this week. And there's such big shifts and changes this week. Like also really taking care of yourself, like, detoxing, taking some Epsom salt baths, drinking a lot of water, like getting a massage, like doing the things that you need, because we are in massive shifts. But that idea with Uranus going retrograde, like that's a big day. That's a big day where we get to experience that energy of Uranus and the upgrades, and it gets to go within. Like that's pretty big. And the shifts that can happen within. I always think about like our nervous system and how we have to be really soothing and grounded in order to be open to the changes that come with Uranus.
I love that you touched in and pulled in the fact that with Uranus being in Taurus, these are about the physical changes to make in our lives to help us upgrade and move forward. Taurus is an earth sign. We're also in the Chinese zodiac. This is it's a metal year and it's an ox year. And so that really feels like so plugged into me that it's about one step at a time. Like we can only work, like you said, with the information we have. We can only take the steps according to the information we have. And if there's stuff that's been pushing at you, that's been just getting louder, now's your big opportunity. It's time to make those physical changes. And if they're physical changes to your space, if they're changes to how you structure your life, if they're changes to how you're in relationship with your body. I'm going back to dance flamenco for the first time tonight in like a year and a half. And very honestly, I'm a lot scared out of my mind. I'm like, oh, this is maybe a bad idea. And I really, really physically miss dancing. So maybe there's something you left behind that it's time to pick up again. Or maybe there's something you've been hauling around that you're just hauling around and you hate it. Like set that thing down.
Yeah. And listening to what your body needs. It's funny that you're bringing up flamenco, because I was thinking about this recently with yoga. I used to do yoga and I, was certified yoga instructor. And then I took a while where I was just did my own thing, did my own body movements, kind of, put that down. But I've been coming back with restorative yoga and taking some yoga classes. And I'm realizing my body is really loving it right now, right? And we're always changing and shifting, so we have to think about that. But that idea of something that maybe was supportive for us before. I was also listening to a podcast and was reminded about some breath work I had done years ago and served me then. And, and then I didn't really need to do it, but I'm like, oh, I need to go back. I need to go back and do that. And it just landed today. And so really listening to our bodies and what our bodies need is huge. It may be movement, but it may also be like our diet. Yesterday there were some foods that dropped in. It was like, you need to go to the grocery store and get these vegetables and these things. And I was like, okay, I'm listening. Like that's what my body needs right now. It's helping me, flush my system and nurture, and it's what I need. So I love that piece too of, maybe things that were supportive before, kind of going back and like you said too, the things that aren't supportive, like just because you've always done it doesn't mean you have to do it. Like if it's not supportive, we shift and change. And that's the ask. Like all of this is asking, for us to be in the most supported, grounded place so that we can move through all these big energy shifts and all these big changes.
Yes, all of you people out there who I see who have been running like the entire 15 years I've lived in this place and are daily runners who are now hobbling, time to set that down. Your knees hurt. Your hips hurt. Pick something else. Like there's so many options. Pick something else, please.
Yeah, listen to your body.
Because we can make changes and we can test things out and give it a go and be with it for a while and then decide it doesn't work and set it down again. Just because we start doing something does not, we're not making like a lifelong commitment. You're not selling your soul to this thing.
Right.
You're testing it out. Does this work for me? And does this work for me right now? Not is it going to work for me in 5 years? Not did it work for me 5 years ago? Is it right now? Like being really present is like, that's so Uranus to me. Like what is right here, right now, right where the lightning bolt's going to hit.
Yes. And also that idea of like releasing something just because we committed to it doesn't mean we have to stick with it. Right. And there's different levels. We talked about this on our last podcast of, do I want to run because it's hard or do I want to run because it's not right for me? Right. Like there's, right. Sometimes we want to run from things that are meant for us and they're just challenging. But that Juno on the South Node piece is really asking us to let go. Like just, that's an old mindset of I committed to something and like, I need to do this thing forever or be with this person forever, or, you know, fill in the blank commitment.
Yeah.
That we're allowed to shift and change. And Uranus is really like hitting us with that this year. And then also to remember Uranus and Saturn are in a square all year. That's the big signature of the year. And with Jupiter and Aquarius for most of the year expanding, right? So taking a look at Aquarius in your chart, if you're familiar with astrology and what house Aquarius is in, just kind of revisiting that, taking a look at like, oh yeah, that's right. That area of my chart, Aquarius especially, is getting really hit right now with Saturn and Jupiter just moving back in. And then we get Uranus going retrograde and taking that, you know, deeper look within. It is highlighting all of those things because he's going to get closer now to Saturn. He's going to get closer to that, you know, planet. And all of those things are going to come back up. Like Saturn is the hard worker. He's a carpenter. He is this is the area of our chart. We're talking about Aquarius, where he comes in, he's there for about 3 years. And he brings in it's like boots on the ground. Okay, we're going to like get the tools out and make this happen in reality, right? Like bring this into being. And so that's highlighted. So you can really see over the year, like what area of your life, you know, that's happening in. And now with Uranus going retrograde and the sun opposing Jupiter, like with this spotlight illumination, a lot of Aquarius energy, right? Right before the full moon in Aquarius. Like if you see, we're really like leading up to this full moon. Because there is so much. Jupiter also will be the brightest in the sky. He'll be the closest to Earth and the brightest that day, August 19th. So that's pretty significant. That's pretty significant of a planet who he's in a sign for about a year. So he moved into Aquarius in December last year. He's been in Aquarius most of the year, took a little pit stop in Pisces, but's back in Aquarius through December. So majority of 2021, Jupiter is in Aquarius. And then on August 19th, he's the brightest in the sky that he'll be. Like there's a big illumination and a big expansion that comes with that energy right before the full moon, right? So there's this really big expansive energy and it's beautiful. Like it's all this soul aligned, like what we deeply, deeply desire. And I know for myself and many people in my life, like it can also to our human, like our physical human bodies, it can be very overwhelming and intense. And hence why we're, you know, talking about the listening to your body, drinking more water, like doing all of these things that are supportive, because yeah, it's big. It is big.
And the Jupiter piece, I have been really working with Jupiter. Jupiter is about our abundance. And in just sitting and feeling this Jupiter energy, like looking at all of the times that we're held in such abundance in our lives and how there's this like just this big like I've got your back energy right now, and I've got your back so you can pursue what you're meant to, like what you're meant to shine here, which I love that they're sitting opposite, because like the sun is like how we shine, and Jupiter is like, I got your back, son. Like it's as oppositions, like here's a conjunction, the energy of palms coming together. And oppositions for me oftentimes feel like palms moving apart and creating space for that abundance, creating space for the manifestation of what those energies are bringing. So this like really shining the light on how abundant we are and how held we are and how supported we are if we choose to allow it. It's all free will. Like, are you going to choose to allow yourself to be supported, or are you going to like back to the defense? Are you going to armor up? Is when you're armored up, are you really supported, or are you hiding? So come out and like get your sun out here, people.
Yeah. And we are very supported always. And right. And that's just a piece to remember and to like, right. Like we're always forgetting and remembering. It's part of our human experience.
Mhm.
So remembering that, but then it does feel like there is extra support. I think because of the big upgrades we're going through. I mean, also feeling into all the planets that are home. The sun is home in Leo. Mercury is home in Virgo. Venus is home in Libra. Neptune is home in Pisces. Saturn is home in Aquarius. Like there's so many planets home, just like, and when they're home, like they get to work in the way they're supposed to work, in the way that they work best. And so there is all of this energy of like, yes. And thinking back to the new moon in Aquarius, when all the planets were in Aquarius, like they weren't all home. They were all visiting Saturn at Saturn's house.
That would be episode 5 if anyone wants to go back and review the Cosmic Cocktail Party.
The Cosmic Cocktail Party, which is still one of my favorites. They were all at this party with Saturn, right? They weren't all home, right? So there was and like the energy in February was very like, we have no idea what's about to happen this year, but like we're just gonna have this party because we're all here and like it's gonna be good, but like WTF. Now right, like all of this time later, 6 months later, a lot of them are home. A lot of these planets are in their home signs. It's like, oh, we get to see what's happened. We get to understand what has unfolded over these past 6 months. And we get to be home to be in the best placement for all of this to happen. Like we are so supported, right? And that I just realized that when I was like thinking about all the planets that were home, that there is this extra support, right? And so leaning into that, leaning into the trust in like our soul, our higher self, whatever you want to, use as universe, love, whatever the word is, lean into that because our humans might be having, just a tougher time. Like there's just a lot of shifting, not a bad time, just can be a lot. And not ignoring, right, all the things that are coming up. But that piece of support, like I love that. I do love like to just feel that, to just like breathe that in for a minute.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. Hunker down in your Epsom salt bath with Venus and Libra and just feel Jupiter holding you. We are supported.
We are supported. Yeah. And then Neptune and Pisces just like whispering, trust.
It's okay.
Yeah. So the next day, Mercury will form its exact trine with Uranus. So Mars and Uranus are going to be in a trine for these couple of days, but Mercury and Uranus hit the exact trine. So the messages, right, might be louder, the kind of information, the insights, our thoughts, that all can be louder that day. Just the day after that, Uranus stations retrograde, right? So like one day in and we already get to have this like megaphone of Mercury just being like, and here you go, here's this piece. And then we have the full moon. So then we finally get to this full moon we've been talking about on August 22nd. So here on the East Coast of the US, that's at 8:01 a.m. on August 22nd. And Amiee had pointed out, like the moon moves really fast out of Aquarius. So it happens at 29 degrees of Aquarius. And then within 40 minutes, it's out of there. It's into Pisces. So if we feel into the moon, because this is full moon number 2 in Aquarius, we had full moon in Aquarius number 1, the end of July. And that was at 1 degrees of Aquarius. So now we're at the other end of the sign, 29 degrees of Aquarius. So there really has been this unfolding over the month. Like there may be pieces that dropped in with that first full moon, but we didn't get to see the fullness of it till now. And even it may take even a couple days after the full moon and in some of that releasing phase of the moon for us to really see and integrate and understand like the messages that are coming, because it's been such big shifts. So yeah. So, and is there anything you want to say before I keep?
I was just going to say, there's a feeling that if you want to get up early in the morning on the 22nd and work with this Aquarian full moon, absolutely do that. There feels like there is a line that once it crosses over into Pisces, like be set and be done, because the energy is going to shift. That moon energy is going to shift as she moves into Pisces. I am letting my community know, I'm letting my women's circle know, it would be a really great idea if you want to like do a ritual or celebrate this moon in any way, to do it Saturday night, to do it the night of the 21st.
Yeah, the night before is definitely the time, because we'll still have a full moon. It'll be pretty full.
Yes, it's going to be full.
Yeah.
And you've got like that nighttime place to send out guides and guardians and helpers to help process and anchor it in. The cat has the computer with his foot.
I saw that as Amiee like moves in the screen farther and farther away.
So really finding time, like I was really encouraging my women's circle to like, hey, let's everybody plan on just dropping in and being in the energy at, 8:30 p.m. Central Time, set your intentions, find what you want to, how you want to move with this moon. It's also happening at a master degree. So that 0-1 degree moon that happened at the end of August, those are like the baby degrees. Those are like our toddler baby degrees where we're still figuring things out. And now we're at this master degree. We're at the 29th degree. And that feels like there is this really stepping into the unity that is possible with Aquarius. And really shining the light, really like bringing that great big full beautiful Aquarian moon and all that illumination toward what unity and humanity could be capable of in its like really heart-centered highest place. Yeah. And I know there's a lot of other stuff going on that day, so we can dive into that.
Yeah, well, I'll get into that for sure. And yeah, the piece with it moving into Pisces so fast does feel supportive in that as the moon reaches its peak fullness, then it begins to wane. And right, we go into this releasing phase. That while the moon shifts into Pisces, we get to be in this releasing and integrating everything that's happened. out of the sign of Aquarius. So, right, it's almost like we get this extra integration from Pisces, which is a sign of surrender and trust. It's a water sign. To be like, if you're going to take a bath, like be in the bath at that time. The moon in Pisces feels like a really big supportive integration time. So earlier that day, so this is August 22nd, and again, depending on where you are, this may even happen the day before, because this is really early morning. We have Venus trine the North Node, and then Mars trine Uranus. So this happens just before the moon, the full moon peaks. So Venus trine the North Node. So I know I'll probably be sleeping, but feeling into that energy of Venus trine the North Node, I think it happens like around midnight or something here on the East Coast. But we'll be in that energy, right, for before and after. Mm-hmm. But like listening to dreams too, that night of the full moon. I know some people have trouble sleeping, but listening and dreams and what's coming up, because Venus and the North Node, like that's a really, and the North Node is in Gemini, right? These are both air signs, and Venus in Libra, who's home. There's this really beautiful energy, and they're in a trine, which is a harmonious aspect where Venus is like, yeah, remember, like this is what you want. This is what you desire. This is what, you're moving towards. And it feels like a really supportive energy as we move into the full moon. As well, then we have Mars trine Uranus, which is also supportive, right? It's like, and here's how we maybe want to take action, or how this maybe wants to look. Or also Mars is about our desires as well, right? That it may look different. It may look different than you've expected. It may be different with that Uranus, right? Like the change aspect of Uranus. It may be different than what you've expected, or what you think you want. And to really just be open. There's this really, with the North Node in Gemini, there's this just like, be curious, be really open and curious, be the student, be like in that place as we move into that full moon. So those aspects hit exact just before the full moon. So again, listening to everything that's coming up, to kind of be in that space of leaning into, trusting that. Those do feel like supportive, even though they're all big energies, right? Like especially with Mars and Uranus. There can be a lot. It might be, you might not be able to sleep so well that night. I know I can sleep through anything, but there are times with the full moon energy where it's like, there's some stuff going on, and that's okay. Like being wherever you are, because there's a lot happening that night leading into that full moon, which happens early in the morning. And again, depending on where you are in the world, it might not be, we're talking about, because I'm on the East Coast of the US and Amy is Central. But again, wherever you are, just feeling into the energies of that's leading us up into that full moon. Venus North Node, Mars Uranus. Like there's a lot there.
There's a lot there. And there was a piece about, it'll come back. It'll have to come back. It escaped me.
Catch that thread if it's meant to.
To come back. It'll circle around if it's meant to be there.
Yeah, for sure. And the fact that Venus and Mars are both personal planets, that we feel, the personal planets, when they aspect things, we feel them. Also thinking about who the ruler of your chart is, that's something that if you look at where your rising sign is and the ruler of that sign, that sometimes can give you information. Because if you have Mars or Venus as a ruler of your chart, that's just something, you don't have to go down that rabbit hole if you don't know, or if you are familiar with, just like, oh yeah, that's interesting. Leaning into that energy. You got it?
I got it. It came back. It's the, if you are a person who doesn't sleep during full moons, even doing a meditation that moves you into the liminal space, getting body work that moves you into liminal space, even being in that in between. When I speak of the liminal space, I'm speaking of that space, like as you're starting to fall asleep and you're starting to fall asleep, but you're not yet asleep, that space between, the Tibetans call it the bardos. It's the between space. And there's such great access when we're in that space to our subconscious self and to our high, wise, deep self. So if you are a person that doesn't sleep, what can you do to support yourself to move into the liminal space? Is, I use Insight Timer, love Insight Timer. They've got like 100,000 meditations. They've got something for everybody. Is there a meditation? Is there something that you can do to help move you into that space of shutting off the thinking mind, which is going to help activate that Gemini beginner's mind curiosity piece, to move into deeper relationship with your own curiosity? And whether that's your curiosity about yourself or your curiosity about like your immediate surroundings, or just go ahead and bubble it out from there. When we can move through the world with curiosity and with more interest in being in a receptive place, rather than in that, like, I need to tell you about me, I need to let you know what's going on here. It softens us and it opens us to deeper, wiser, more centered ways of being. And it cleans out the stuff. It helps clean out the stuff that's not working. So back to our, like, it's cleaning out the pipes time. So I got it. It came back. Yes.
Love it. And then later that day, the sun enters Virgo. So happy birthday to all the Virgos out there. So we shift out of Leo season and into Virgo season right after that full moon. So there's a lot of shifting that day, right? Like you can feel there's the highlight of Venus in the North Node reminding us, right, of where we want to go. There's Mars and Uranus bringing like that change energy in a very like big way. And then we have this full moon illumination. Then we shift, the moon shifts really fast. Like everything's kind of shifting that day. The moon shifts really fast into Pisces, which does feel supportive for our integration. And then the sun moves into Virgo. So a lot of shifting that day. So really, yeah, like taking that day to just like relax, like just, go to the beach, like take a little break, read a book, whatever you want to do that day. It feels like there's just so much shifting energy. Like we don't really have to do much that day. Everything that's been coming the week leading up to the full moon, like we're doing it. It's enough. We're in it. And then that day, there's just a lot of shifting. So just being with that. What?
Soften and receive.
Soften. Yeah, that's a great word for it.
Like soften and soak it up.
Yes. Yeah. And the next day, we have Venus trine Saturn. So that's why we might need to take a little break, like with the full moon, take a little, because then Saturn comes in and it's like, okay, that's great. But now like get on the workhorse, get the tools out. Here we go. Saturn loves to, get to work. But trine Venus, right? And they're both home. So this is an interesting aspect because they're both home, and relationships may definitely be highlighted. Like Mars might be taking out his like hammer and like tools to the relationships. Like, let's look at those foundations. Let's like get in there. Especially coming off of this full moon where we've been in a week, really a month, and longer, but we've been in this month between these two full moons. We had the Lionsgate portal, which we spoke about in one of our last podcasts, these two full moons in Aquarius, like we've been in it. Then we have this peak of the moons where we're finally getting to see, and we're finally having some understanding of what's going on. Then we get this Venus and Saturn piece where it's like, okay, we're going to take a look at some of the foundations. We're going to go to work. We're going to go to work. With Venus, though, who does bring in she brings in this balancing and this harmonious energy. But relationships feel like they'll definitely be loud. And also, it always comes back to us, always. So like, what is coming up in us? Like those foundational pieces, what is kind of loud, that we need to see, work on in order for us to get to work, to move forward, to get where we want to go. Feeling into that Venus North Node piece just the day before, like it's there, like believing it and trusting it and holding that, like holding that vision and holding that feeling for what we want. And then also having Saturn come in just feels like this. It can feel constricting sometimes. It can feel like, whoa, I don't know about that. But when we can lean into it, like he's just the carpenter who wants to come in and help you and fix things. Or, he also has the energy of like, sometimes it can be like that father energy, and that like in the highest, it's coming from a place of love, of holding and protecting, of like, I will support what you want to create. But at first, sometimes it can feel a little bit constricting, because it's like, it's that get to work time. It's like, get back on it.
If anybody wants to go back and learn a little bit more about the Lion's Gate, that's episode 17. And yeah, we've just been so in it. And Saturn for me, I sometimes imagine my bathtub is Saturn. Like he's going to hold all the water and the bubbles or whatever I put in the bathtub. And like, he's this structure, and he can hold, and he can be whatever size you need him to be. Like you can go buy a great big huge bathtub, or you can buy a little teeny, like, the ones with little doors that I don't really know how those work, but they're fascinating to me. He can create and build and hold whatever size you want your container to be. That's one of the beauties of this very like carpenter aspect of him, is he's willing to work with what you as the client want, rather than impose upon you what the plan is. That's not what he's there for. He's not there to tell you what the plan is. He's there to make happen and bring into reality what you want the plan to be. When, everything's lined up and you're good with Saturn. It's all about being good with Saturn.
Yeah, for sure. And to remember again, like these are themes. Saturn has been in Aquarius for this year. These are things that we've been working with and towards all year. It's things that we do deeply want. But we keep hitting these like checkpoints of, do you really want it? And are you willing to keep going? Right? Like there's always a choice, but it feels like another one of those checkpoints, with Saturn, of like, okay, like we're building this thing. We've been working all year building this thing. Want to keep going? Like, do you want to keep like going to the next piece? And then on August 24th, we have Mercury opposing Neptune, which feels like this reminder of trust, right? Like we have Saturn coming in and be like, do you really want that? You said you want it. Are you willing to put the work in? And then Mercury and Neptune, who are opposing each other. Mercury and Pisces, who's saying, do you trust? Like, do you trust in that? Can you surrender into it? Can you like get out of your mind, drop the mind, and just really like surrender? I'm picturing like a bath. Like, can you just like swim in it? Can you be in that place with it? And Mercury is holding up, right? Again, the messages and the, like, especially that day, it feels like our minds may want to be really active, and there may be beautiful ideas and insights that are coming, but it's like bringing it down and like dropping it down lower, and expanding out into that trust and that surrender place, because our minds can be really beautiful, but they can just take over the whole show. And that's not what Neptune wants.
No, Neptune does not want to be in that like logical, linear, constricted, here's the like straight line mental place. I think that tends to feel really uncomfortable for him, her, them. And I think it can create a split. It can create an internal severing. When we are just so sure that is the only way. as we work best when our heads are being informed by our hearts.
Yeah, and so that's that reminder, because then 2 days later, Mercury trines Pluto. And I feel like we have been in a lot of death, and just in the releasing, right? Whenever we're going through cycles, whenever there's changes, whenever there's upgrades and we're moving on to the next best thing, there's a death and there's a honoring and there's a shifting in the transformation of things. Like there is always, it's always a cycle, right? That death and rebirth cycle. So I do feel like we have been in, as we're moving forward, as all these shifts are changing, that there is also the releasing and the death. And so Pluto is god of the underworld. He is about transformation, evolution, and he's in a trine with Mercury on the 26th. So it feels like the messages that day really are around, and we've been in this kind of, especially with the moon waning as well, right? Like we've been in a lot of releasing and a lot of letting go with Venus on the south, with Juno on the south node, and all the things that we're realizing like are coming up, right? And it's okay. We've probably been working through releasing and letting go, but now we have this really supportive time with the moon waning and appearing smaller in the sky as Mercury trines Pluto, and kind of brings in that like deep excavating piece of like it's ready for that last little bit. Like it's time, it's ready. And to also honor that, to honor the cycles when there is a death. Like we have to honor, if you think about the cycles, there's spring, summer, fall, winter, there's a harvest in the fall before things go into the complete stillness and that death of winter. There's a harvest in the celebrating and the full cycle of things. And so with, like, we might think, where we're at by that point, like we're good, like whatever I needed to release, like I'm good. Be open, because that day when Mercury trines Pluto, there may be like this last little bit, and it might not be like grieving, crying. It could be that. It might not be that piece. It might be actually like the celebrating and bringing the love in and like infusing whatever it is we've let go with love. Right? It could be that. And so just being open to, like, as much as you're just like, I want to keep the lid on that and we're good and I don't want to ever look at that again. Well, it might be like a pressure cooker if you don't. Like if you don't like kind of like get that last bit, it might just like sit there for a while, and then someday it'll kind of burst open. Like, oh, I wish I looked at that back then.
Back in 2021, when I had this grand opportunity after the second Aquarian full moon, like what was I thinking? The other piece that feels important and valuable to just speak a little bit around Pluto is his ongoing square with Eris, the goddess of chaos, discord, and creative chaos, like the chaos of creation. And that they have been they're both slow movers. They're so far out there. The thing that has struck me as very, very interesting. So Pluto is in Capricorn, which is like really this like top-down authority. Eris, she's like the goddess of creative chaos and discord. She's also like the grassroots street fighter. I don't know if anybody's noticed any protests, grass movement stuff going on since 2020. They started their aspects, these squares, back in 2020. And I think there's one more going exact this week or next. And then there's 1/5 one, because, you can't do enough top-down authority meets the grassroots street fighter enough in these 2 years. So they're in this square aspect that, if you think about it, can help lift us up. The top-down authority we recognized in 2020 is not something that works. We're in a period of the reclamation of our own personal sovereignty. And that's a hard growth edge for a lot of people. It's much easier to be on the cruise ship and just show up for the buffet than it is to be in your little rowboat. And when we're in our little rowboat, we have more maneuverability. I just watched Titanic the other night because that's just where I'm at right now. Like, let's just watch shit that makes you cry, right? We're cleaning out the pipes, right?
Yeah.
And watching the depiction of them trying to move this ship, trying to get this massive, bulky, top-down authority to have any level of maneuverability, to have any ability to shift and meet the current situation. For me right now, it's really feeling like a piece of our inability to meet the present is that we're trying to move these massive structures that aren't meant to meet the present.
Yeah.
That they're meant as monuments to things that have died a long time ago that we haven't finished flushing out. Like, to circle back to that, like flushing out the last of the death and the grief and the release. And we've got Eris up there. She's in the same spot she was when good old Chris Columbus landed in the Americas and brought chaos to, the actual people who lived here. She's up there like shaking things up, this like feminine street fighter who's like, enough already. It was never good to begin with, so we can't like go with this. It'll all be good again. Like, how do we restructure? How do we work with chaos as a creative force for something that allows growth and reclamation and a change in how we're meeting life right now? Not with the cruise ship, but right now. And so I'm really feeling the whole Pluto, Eris.
Yeah. And that day we will feel it, right? Because as Mercury kind of highlights that, Eris will be highlighted as well. And yeah, to feel with the chaos and the change that Eris brings, and then the change of Uranus that we've been talking about. Like, there's that feminine piece, and then there's the Uranus piece. Like, it's pretty big. It's pretty juicy. And then also to feel into that idea of the cruise ship versus the rowboat. Like, we get stronger when we're in the rowboat too, right? And so there's a strength that comes, like, if we look at what this means personally, because we can definitely see it collectively. And especially that day, and as things get kind of louder, like we're going to continue to see it. And then personally as well, like, with the chaos around, right, it's feeling into like, what is my role to play? Because we can't tune it out, we can't ignore it. Like, this is our reality. How can we get stronger rather than trying to like hide, or like, I just want to go back, or I want to, like, all of these things? It's actually being in the rowboat and getting stronger. And I'm like, the image I have is like this being this really strong rooted tree in a storm, right? Like, rather than this like the tree doesn't like, oh, I'm gonna go try hide. It's right, the stronger trees just hunker down, and they can withstand the weather and the chaos and everything happening around them. So it's like, be that strong rooted tree within yourself. And what does that mean? What is it going to take? Most likely you're going to need the right people around you, right? The right relationships. You're going to need to be able to listen to yourself and your body and what you need. All of these pieces are how we get stronger. And then how do I want to interact, and like, what can I contribute or do or be, right, in the world? Because we're also not all meant to be activists, right? Like, and we can be activists in our own ways. Like, I think we all have passions and things, but we're not all meant to do it in the same way. So that's really also like really listening to your unique like blueprint and what you are meant to do. Because if we're all doing what we're meant to do, like, we'd be in a much different place.
We would be in a much different place. You were talking about that, and the image that jumped into my head is from the Lord of the Rings series, and Merry and Pippin yelling at the trees, the Ents, saying like, you're a part of this world. and each of us has a role to play. And like you said, we can't all be activists. And maybe our activism is how we parent our children. Maybe our activism is how we show up in partnership with our romantic partner. Like there's that, like we are all activists and we're not all meant to be activists in the same way.
Right. Or the way that you might think when you hear
activist.
Like, that's not for me. But right, when you come back to like, okay, well, there is that thing that you are passionate about, that, right? And it's all connected.
Yeah.
And also not shutting off and not being like, well, that's not happening here, or that's not mine to worry about, right? It's being really open and being, I think the best thing we can do also is like educate ourselves and to be aware and to share and to have these conversations with people. And, I know I've been having some really like pushing the boundaries on conversations with family and people. And it's interesting, like the receptivity of a lot of times, like you don't know unless you don't say it or share it, right? And that in itself can be like your inner activist, right? Like speaking, right? There's also this like not being silent. Like we are in a time when, depending on what part of the world, and we're lucky enough to be in a part of the world where we can speak and we can, right? We have the freedom to do these things. And it's like, well, that's a gift, like that, like, right? Like to honor that and to be able to not just, and you can feel it even when you're in a conversation with someone, something hits you and you're like, oh, that's not right. Like, and sometimes, you don't need to get into it necessarily, but just speaking, I've had that come up, and it's just like, all you have to do is drop one little thing, and it kind of either makes that person like go, huh, or, right? Like it just shuts it down. You don't have to get into a debate unless you want to. I mean, go for it if you want to, but it's just not being silent when those kind of things come up. I think might be part of it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's no longer like we need to stop walking out of the room. We need to use our voices. It feels really super important.
Yeah. And if you have those people around you that like what they're saying just doesn't, it's not resonant, or it's not supportive, or it's not like, right, like speaking that, and also having the boundaries of like, not everyone needs to be in my life. And by you setting that boundary, it says to them, oh, this person is here, right? And there may be no one in their lives who pushes back at them or who sets a boundary, or because it's not always about engaging with those people. It might be setting a boundary with those people. So wherever it is, right, it all comes back to like just doing what is best for you, right?
Do you.
And sometimes we need, and we've talked about this, Amy, of we all have different, and this is why I love human design, we all have different ways that our intuition kind of hits us. So some people do need a little bit longer to process, to sleep on it, right? So there may be something that comes up and you're like, I'm going to sit with that one and see, where I really stand with it, because it might hit me emotionally and I need to ride the wave, right? I'm thinking about emotional authorities, and like you might need to sit with it and let that kind of ride its wave. And then you get to the point where you're like, okay, I know. And the next time this comes up, right? Like I'm going to know where I stand with that. Thing or that person or whatever. And so it's also knowing, you may have like an intuition that is just in the moment, like it comes up and you can speak it and know it, but you also may be the kind of person who has to kind of sleep on it. So either way, no matter where you are, and I love human design, so that'll be a side note.
We'll do that.
We'll talk about that in another podcast episode. But like, right, and you don't have to know human design, just feel into you, right? That's what it's coming down to, is just feel into you what you need, and what is in your highest is always in someone else's highest. That's it.
It's beautiful. It's perfect. I love it. Just because if anybody wants to come play, I have a workshop coming up in central Minnesota on September 18th. It's a half-day event. There will be a fire walk, but don't decide that you're about your walking status until you're standing next to the fire. And then I'll be doing another workshop out in Southern Massachusetts on October 9th for our East Coast population. So just, in the interest of trying new things and creating change, come see what changes if you change your belief in your relationship with fire.
And that transformative quality, right? Like we were talking about Pluto and the transformation that he holds, that fire is an element of transformation, right? And that you can go into something and you never know what you're going to get. You just have to listen to the call. If it feels like, oh, I need that, without having to know why, there's that quality.
Yeah, so. That doesn't need to be a head reason. I love this. Happy full moon.
Happy full moon. So there's a few last bits just to close out August. We have the sun will trine the North Node on August 29th. So that will bring some illumination to that soul path, that all of this work, all of this stuff that we've been working on, the sun comes, makes a square. So there may be some challenges. There may be some, I think a lot when you're on that path, right? Like when you choose the thing that's in your highest, and remembering it doesn't have to be a straight line. Like we get to choose and change in directions and shift. But there also will probably be little tests and little are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Like the universe loves to test us. So remembering that as the sun squares the North Node, that some of those pieces might come up just before Mercury leaves Virgo and enters Libra. So Mercury will now enter the sign of Libra, that balance harmony, kind of moving through Libra. So that's where we kind of close out August. And then beginning of September, we have a new moon in Virgo. So there's some really more big energy that comes through with Uranus is involved. We have Jupiter, more of Venus, Mars, and Pluto all on that day of the new moon in Virgo. So that's a big day as well to hold that we have this full moon in Aquarius, big shifting, big energy happening. Then we have these, 2 weeks to be in the integration, to listen to all the messages that are coming up with everything that we've talked about. And then we get the new moon in Virgo. That again has a lot, these moons all have a lot of aspects and a lot of planets. It's not just okay, here's the moon and here's one aspect. It's the moon and a bunch of aspects and planets. So just holding that as well for as we enter September. We get that first new moon in Virgo, the first new moon of Virgo season. So
Virgo season.
Yeah.
Virgo season. And until then, this was spectacular. I love it. We've got our deeply rooted trees. We've got our little boats. We're rowing to get stronger and to build our stamina. And we've got this super juicy, really potent moon happening in just a couple days.